Hi, my name is Ariel from the Children of Karma, and today I'd like to discuss the mini grand trine, Uranus in Gemini, Neptune in Aries, and Pluto in Aquarius, and its impact on the field of psychology, psychiatry, hypnosis. It's interesting. It's just coming to me with this Saturn-Neptune conjunction that we have here, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction of the past, 1914 to 1918. Carl Jung wrote the Red Book, and this book would remain hidden until he passed, and his family decided to release the book. And this was the origins of his theories. Interesting how much esoteric wisdom, how much ancient knowledge, how much mythology was used there, was explored in that book. And fascinated by the way that he chose to translate that information into scientific, practical, clinical theory, to be held with higher esteem. There's something about the power of language. With Uranus and Gemini, we'll start to unlock those powers, hopefully demystifying that clinical jargon and maybe being able to access more of that authentic, ancient language. It's interesting too. It's like to translate that information into new words. Sometimes words are just created even to explain a process that already existed, already occurred, has been occurring without this label, without this name. And now someone can come along, translate it, and provide a clinical name. And now they are now the father of something, or the creator of the first, or the someone who founded something. When was it really founded? Wasn't it already founded? Maybe it was founded by esoteric wisdom. It just was not presented with this language. And what language is it? Sometimes we're creating words to explain a process. What power does that language now hold that makes it now more credible? What is it? What is that thing that makes it now stable in the eyes of others? And also considering the environment, the social environment. Carl Jung was 1914 to 1918, we had the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. At this time, there were court cases involving astrology. It was not a great time for astrology in society. And who knows what it's going to be now, where it will swing. But it's bringing up themes of this Red Book and how he had to kind of conceal. He concealed it. He never, to take 4 years on a creation and to just keep it hidden forever, as far as he knows, it's forever. And I wonder sometimes what he thinks about that. Now that it is released, it was released in 2009, and I haven't heard about it. I had to dig it up myself. So, what does he feel about that? That is society still not ready for those concepts in their rawness and their realness? Something about language that it empowers, but it also conceals, sterilizes. And why is that necessary? Is it too vague? Is it not tangible? Can we not hold it? Does it not unlock something within? I think we're all operating on some system. Certain languages unlock certain feelings within. You need to hear the phrases align in a certain way in order to unlock something within. Sterilizing that language, and now doing it just through the technology. We can see that happening again. We're sterilizing the information. We're sterilizing our own words because they have to be now first communicated to the AI and then be received by others. So going through a filtering process, those words, maybe they lose their power. Or maybe they become powerful to another being, another type of being. Who knows? Who knows? But I can understand with his circumstances why he wanted to sterilize the language. But then again, in a way, he proves his own theory. He was avoiding this kind of mystic label by hiding this expression of self. And then when he did release his theories, a more clinical, sterilized version, he was still seen as the mystic, more mystic than psychologist, and hiding those origins for fear that he would be seen as mad or insane. Hopefully this Uranus and Gemini, now with the help of these other two outer planets, maybe we demystify the language. Maybe we no longer need that clinical jargon to mask the reality of the truth of the concept. Certain words like, roti and naan and flatbread and tortilla, even scallion pancakes, they're all the same. They're all the same. This bread that we use to transport other foods, it's the same thing. It's even made in similar ways. But the name gives it some sort of power, right? The language gives it some sort of identity. Maybe we're trying to figure out the commonalities. Maybe not separating. We are having a battle of semantics every time Mars unites with Uranus in Gemini. So maybe every 2 years we have this battle over a certain concept, what it means, how we should define it. So that will be interesting. There's something about that symbolic language that the way that it is received, it sinks, it bakes in, it marinates. You get a first impression, and you can even look at that first impression as, why did I receive that interpretation? Why did I pull on that interpretation first? What does that say about me? What am I drawn to within the symbols? And how do I pull myself away from that so that I can see the fuller picture? That symbolic language holds a lot of power. So to have to sterilize it, on one hand, I understand. It needs to be more grounded, more tangible. But it pulls away from the truth of what it means. With Neptune in Aries also, we can see more dreams, dream theory, maybe more studies about dreams, maybe more studies around hypnosis, how it impacts the brain and body. Maybe that period of sleep right before we fall asleep, that 10 minutes maybe before we fall asleep, studying this period of time and seeing how in this space we're more moldable, we're more accepting of suggestions, seeing what parts of the brain are activated. Maybe it's different for each individual, maybe it's not. Exploring how maybe certain types of hypnosis can help the body. Maybe if they're more specific towards certain themes, maybe they have a different impact. Maybe exploring this a little bit more. We can also look at these transits throughout history and see what has the developments within the field at this time, to see what kind of themes they highlight within these planetary symbols. Neptune in Aries, for example, is more movement. The principles of physiological psychology was founded while Neptune was in Aries in 1873. Paul Braca on the cortical localization of function, the study of brain localization, while Neptune was in Aries and Uranus was in Gemini in 1861. We can definitely see more of this brain and nerve activity with Uranus and Gemini too. Studying the brain, studying the nerves, and seeing how they impact our mental health, our well-being, our quality of life. In 1865, we had Gregor Mendel's hereditary study with peas, while Uranus was in Gemini and Neptune was in Aries. Also in 1869, the discovery of DNA. We'll definitely be using more of the body. Also, perhaps we can look at hereditary traits, biological markers within the body that are similar. What travels down the line, what types of illnesses travel down the line, exploring this, maybe even in a psychological, through a psychological lens as well, looking for psychological traits within the family and what is passed down. Utilizing the DNA biological markers, perhaps tied to certain psychological traits. That can go either way. Kids can be dangerous as well. Perhaps you have a biological marker that shows a more violent behavior, but perhaps it's not active. Perhaps it's just within, it's available because it comes from the family line, but it has not been activated. It's sitting dormant. Could be jumping to conclusions, through this more cold scientific model that maybe is not as human-centered. 1942, Carl Rogers published Counseling and Psychotherapy and Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs in 1943. This is interesting too, I think. Perhaps somebody can develop a system, Uranus, a higher minded system, that a new hierarchy of needs, or a new system that can show the development of children, childhood development, living alongside technology. This is a brand new thing, all of this technology. And some of us have been introduced to technology, in our teens. So we had the childhood without technology. Our brains were at least a little bit formed before we were introduced to technology. It's something that we've not properly studied, the impact it can have on a child's brain, on an infant's brain as well. It could be very dangerous. Perhaps we're doing more studies on this, and perhaps someone develops a system that can show a new form of childhood development that incorporates these factors and how technology can impact the formation of certain brain parts of the brain. 1860, while Uranus was in Gemini and Neptune was in Aries, Franciscus Donders founded Human Reaction Time in Cognitive Processing. He explored this concept. This is interesting. This will come up again with Uranus and Gemini, with children, childhood learning, processing information, and how it has changed with the introduction of technology. Does it impact our reaction time? Is it better? Is it worse? Maybe exploring these concepts. Psychology incorporating the technological advancements, using them, using the studies on the body to craft a plan for your patients. Perhaps maybe you include more tools like acupressure mats, for example, tuning forks, or maybe telling your patients to walk outside a little bit more. Maybe utilizing more body techniques, grounded body techniques, utilizing that information that we're getting from those studies and helping people in more practical ways. with their body, even utilizing exercise, looking at the way that exercise can impact the body, how it can help the body, how it can heal the body, and maybe more recommendations that involve movements. Also utilizing the technology, gathering the information that we tell to the AI, for example, highlighting the amount of times maybe someone may be using a certain phrase, or how many times they exhibit certain symptoms, certain behavior patterns up there based on your searches, based on the way that you speak to the AI, utilizing all this information to develop even a psychological profile. You know, how at risk are you to harm yourself, to harm others? Developing psychological profiles and maybe determining personality traits, based on this information. Yeah, it can be used. Can be very dangerous to use this. What if someone's having a bad day and they use the AI to vent? What if they do have a biological marker that had a rough family, and they do have these biological markers? Are you going to? What consequences are they going to face? Will they face them before an action takes place? Will it be a preventative, cold kind of society? In the 1940s, while Uranus was in Gemini, Dave Ellman developed rapid induction techniques. They were even using them in place of anesthesia for dental surgeries. That's interesting. Perhaps we try something like this too. Who knows? Who knows? We could explore more of these themes now that Neptune, that planet of hypnosis, is in Aries. It has more influence now. It will be explored, new things coming into the field. We could explore psychopharmacology, which we are, utilizing more substances in the process of healing mental health issues, PTSD, stress-related symptoms, using more psychopharmacology. Perhaps we go into that lane as well. So it's, on one hand, it could be those that go towards more holistic and spiritual methods, and then on the other end, those who go towards more medical. But then it's interesting, as that mini grand trine becomes exact at 6 degrees, how does that swing? Does that impact the health? I definitely see a structure being based, a childhood development, new childhood development structure. It has to be changed. It's we're living in a different world now, and to properly find out the impact of technology on childhood development, on their mental health, on their learning patterns, their ability to learn and grasp information, their memory as well. Their memory. This is important too. Are they developing a memory with all of the short form content that's out there? Are they training their brains to read and grasp complex concepts? Can they discuss and bounce ideas and think creatively? Perhaps creating tools that can help. Perhaps there is technology that can help move through some of these issues, help them with these issues. Perhaps there are, or maybe that's making it worse. Perhaps there's more grounded, more earthly methods that can help. Now, whatever is effective. But yes, focusing more on body, mind-body connections, how vagus nerve techniques, maybe pushing forth more of this information, researching more in terms of how the nerves and the brain play an impact. Even with chronic pain, 25% of people with chronic pain show ADHD symptoms. And this is important to know because this causes disturbances in other areas, and it's important to see. It's important to know what it is so that you can help free yourself of it, or at least learn how to manage it. Spatial intelligence can be off with things like chronic pain as well. I definitely see that. And it impacts your life, your quality of life. So maybe exploring more of these issues and how they can play a role in how we are behaving on a daily basis. Perhaps it's not the person as much as it is the stress of the environment, the environmental triggers impacting the body in a negative way. Maybe there are little things that we can do, like maybe opening a window and breathing in fresh air every morning, looking at the sun, or, the clouds, being in the sun, taking a walk outside. Maybe these little things are things that we can do to help ourselves, help our mental health. Thank you for joining me for this video. I'd love to see you at childrenofkarma.com, and don't forget to like the video. Bye.